Welcome to Enjoy Fort Wayne. This episode is brought to you by the YLNI Farmers Market and highlights the 350 vendors that make up the #1 market in the state of Indiana. Today we're talking to Tonya Samuels from Maria's Candles and More. What is more, you might ask? Well, you're going to have to listen and find out. She'll tell us how she got into entrepreneurship and what being a part of the market means for her. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and be sure to hit the notification bell on YouTube so you know when we drop new videos. So today, Tonya Samuels will help us enjoy Fort Wayne.
My name is Tonya Samuels, and I am the owner of Maria's Candles and More. I make soy candles, and I also make greeting cards.
How long have you been doing that?
The candles I've been making since 2004. Just started as a hobby. I have allergies and got to the point where I couldn't burn candles out of the store. My sister-in-law suggested that I start making them. At that time, I was kind of making homemade chocolates. My mom's a baker, so I learned from her. And the consistency of the chocolates is similar to that of wax.
Really?
Yeah. So, and I've always been good at like mixing and colors and things like that.
Most people probably know that, like, they're not dumbfounded by that, but I'm dumbfounded. Like, I didn't know that the consistency is kind of the same. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, if you're already kind of like into like baking and things, it was kind of like an easy transition.
I'm
me.
into more eating and, and smelling the good smells. So
yeah.
I'm more in that frame.
Well, I started that way. My mom started doing cake. She's a cake decorator. I was in like second grade. So yeah, I kind of transitioned from just being the tester into actually like assisting her, in making. And the greeting cards just kind of, I think I've kind of just always done it and just given them out to people. But this was probably like 2015 is when I kind of started doing them regularly. My family had a bakery when I lived in Indianapolis. And my mom was like, people are always coming in here asking for birthday cards. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just make some. Not thinking it was going to really
to the bakery. Off. They were asking.
Because they would come in to pick up birthday cakes that she made for them. And then it would ask her, well, do you happen to have cards?
I never thought of that.
I didn't either, but she said she was starting to get customers regularly asking for birthday cards. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll make some. And then we were coming up on Valentine's Day. So I was like, well, I'll do Valentine's too. And then I really kind of didn't think anything else of it. And then she's like, the cards are all gone. I sold them all. I need you to make more. And I'm like, okay.
Like, is this a thing now? You're like, right?
Literally, it turned into a weekly. I was making cards for the bakery. And it was so funny because people were like, we didn't know you were that crafty. And I was like, it was just one of those things I just kind of always just made things for people, but never thought to like turn it. And by that point I had already been doing cards candles for a long time. Never even thought to like add the cards to it.
So at what point did you say, okay, I realize now this is a thing and I want to make this now my everyday, like, this is what I want to do?
Well, let's see. So like 2004, I really didn't fully officially turn it into a business until 2012. Like when I first started.
So it was a while.
Yeah. I was just making them to give to people
on the side and not really making that much money necessarily.
At first I wasn't even charging people. I was just making them as gifts.
Okay.
And people were like, you really need to sell these. So then I kind of started just selling them to coworkers. Never even thought of doing like farmers markets or anything. I was just selling to coworkers during the holidays and then just giving them to family members. And then 2012, it was just like, it was such a turning point year for me. And that fall, I was just like, you need to turn this into a business. I didn't know what I was doing or anything. Like I, paid a company to file all of my, doing business paperwork. I had no idea.
Make an LLC, things like that, like the official.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like from there, I'm like, so now what do I do? And
you really just dove in.
I did.
every day was a new experience because you didn't know
I
what
had
was.
no idea.
You knew your product.
That was it. I knew I had a great product. Other than that, I was just like, how do I get this out to, other people? No idea. And I remember, so like I said, at the time I was still living in Indianapolis. Um, but I knew about the downtown farmers market that was on Wednesdays. And I was like, well, let me just find out what I have to do to, sign up for it. I work, at the time I was still working in the office. I'm a web developer for a Catholic healthcare system. So sometimes our schedules were pretty flexible. I've been remote since 2015, but prior to then, pretty flexible. If you needed to be remote for a day, they were fine with it.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, I'll work remote on market days. It was like 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. every Wednesday. Packed up my stuff, went downtown, set up. It was the craziest thing because I was so new, but the other vendors around me were so helpful. They're like, you got to get a square. People don't carry cash anymore. Like, I learned so much just that first week. But week after week, I just kept coming back and learning. And it was an experience. It was exhausting because people think I'm just this outgoing, like, bubbly person. I'm really an introvert. I had to work really hard at learning how to just be outgoing with people. My mom made me take speech when I was in high school. When I was like in elementary, middle school, she made me join the cheer team to try to get me out of, just
Your
being
shell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so even with that, I've always tried to like do things to try to push me to get out of that. When I still worked in the office, I joined Toastmasters. That was like the scariest thing ever. But I mean, I'm thankful I've done all those things because even now I still have to, like, at the market, I get prepared and I'm like, okay, people are going to start coming in. You can do this. But once I kind of click into that mode, like, I'm good. And I just kind of keep going. I love talking to people. I love sharing my story. I love getting other people's stories. I tell people as like my goal with my business is similar to like when you go to Bath and Body Works or when you go to Starbucks. People go because they like the product, but also they like the experience, that they get. And I want people to leave my booth feeling like they experienced something. So that's just something that I kind of like wrap all in, into one thing.
And how long then have you been in Fort Wayne?
So I've been here since 2018, but I had been coming up here since 2012. My boyfriend lives here. We met online. So that's when I started coming up here and just kind of like going to events. So I had actually been doing like some of the smaller events for years prior to me moving here. I'd done events at the mall. My products were in that. There was a store in the mall called Market in the Mall. My candles were in there. I'd done monthly events at Spees Field House. So I'd kind of gotten to know some people, around here. And then finally I was just kind of like, I like it here. Like, I think I want to move here. And like I said, 2015, I started working remote full time. So I'm like, okay, job's not an issue, so just kind of buttoned out some other things. And literally that summer of 2018 was so crazy because 2015, I went back to school to get another degree in biomedical engineering technology. So that summer of 2018, I was finishing my degree, had to do an internship, was still working full time, still doing my candles and packing in like a 3-1 time period. But I literally moved here, hit the ground running, doing events every weekend. And so, yeah, here I am.
So what is one thing about Fort Wayne that you've learned? I mean, you didn't grow up here. You haven't been coming here for all that long in the grand scheme of things. So what is one thing about Fort Wayne that you really enjoy? And what is something that you like to do when you're not worried about making any of your products or worried about sales or you're not working? What is something about Fort Wayne that you enjoy doing?
I enjoy like the art scene here and how I feel like Fort Wayne as a city embraces small businesses. That was something that stood out to me, every time I came up here. It just always seemed to be something going on that involved, small businesses. And not saying that Indianapolis didn't, but I just felt like Fort Wayne almost like made that part of like city planning to include, small businesses and entrepreneurs in that development. And that was something that just really, stood out to me. And I'm like, gosh, I really feel like moving here would help me like take my candle business, to that next level. And it did. It pushed me, to do more things and regular events, and to kind of build up this following, people who like look for you when you're going to be places. And it's funny because the flip side of that is it kind of forced me more into like that whole social media landscape. And people were like, well, that should be easy for you. You're a developer, you're on a computer all day. And I said, that's the point. When I'm done working, that is the last thing I want to do. So that had been challenging, of just kind of like, staying engaged with my, customers, and just, making it a community. So once I started looking at it more like that versus like as a business, then it kind of became easier, because, I like seeing posts from other people, and I like when people post things and they're like, oh my God, I love my candles. And so it's weird because, yes, I love, the business side as far as like, the financial side of this. But to me, I enjoy even more just making those connections with people, even if it's a slow day. I'm like, if I got to connect with someone, or even if I just had one new customer, like that's a win to me, And I try to explain that to people, especially to small business owners. Like, you have to take each day at a time. You have to treat each event individually, or you'll give up. It's a growth, it's a process, it's a continuum. And if you reach just one person, then that was a successful event.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I wanted to ask you, if someone came to you and they had a similar idea of starting a business, or in general, they just wanted to start a business, what is something that a piece of advice that you would give them?
What I tend to share with people is, I've had people say, oh my gosh, I couldn't start a business. I don't know what I would do. And I said, first start with, what are you passionate about? People tend not to last in their new business if they're not passionate about what they're doing. Unfortunately, I saw that a lot, during the pandemic, because people were, and I get it, you're like, hey, I've got to find a new money source. I have to find a new source of income. And so they weren't necessarily chasing a passion. They were trying to quickly figure out, how can I make money? And that could sustain you for a little while, but it's not going to get you through those slow times or those bad days, because then you're like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Because you're not passionate about
it. But when you're passionate, you're going to give it your all, whether there's 50 people or 5 people. You're going to give that same energy week after week, whether it's, cold outside, hot outside, freezing cold. And I mean, those of us that do the market, you have to have a passion to get up, every Saturday morning and pack up the car, no matter what the weather is like, and head out to your events. And so I tell people, start with something that's a passion of yours, or start with something that was a need that you personally had. Like for me, making candles it started as a personal need, because I've loved candles since I was a kid, and so that love of candles, and then becoming an adult, and then allergies, and oh my gosh, I can't burn candles out of the store anymore. How do I fix that need? And so that started as a personal need. And it was weird because for a long time I didn't always share that story with people, but a lot of my customers were like, you need to share that piece, because it's helped so many other people who are like, oh my gosh, I have allergies too. Or someone in my house has allergies. I can't burn candles, but I can burn yours. And I love hearing those stories, from people, because I take what I present to everyone to heart, and I, not only am I offering something to other people, but I am my own customer. So I put that thought into, every candle that I make, every new scent combination that I come up with. I know it has to work for me personally. And then I'm keeping in mind, my customers out there who have allergies or things like that. So, it's not just a job. It's not just a money maker. Like, it's something that I love to do, and I love being able to share that with other people.
Love that. That's a great attitude to have, and it keeps you week to week when you're passionate about it, that if you have a bad week, hey, it's all right, I'll get it better next week. When you're passionate about it. Let's talk a little bit about the market. How long have you been doing the YLNI Farmers Market, and are you there every week, or how does that work?
So this past summer was my first time regularly doing the market. It was one of those things, people had been telling me about it for years. They're like, oh my gosh, you really need to do that market. And I'd been coming to it just as a customer, and I was scared. I was just like, I don't know if I'm ready for it.
It's too big?
Yeah,
or just,
that
oh
is
my gosh.
what I felt. And so I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to handle this like on a weekly basis. It's one thing to do a big event that's like 3 days and it's once a year.
Right, and it's done with.
But
then.
that YLNI is that every weekend, like thousands of people every weekend. And so I was just like, are you ready for this? Can you do this? And I was so nervous that first, Saturday, but it was amazing.
I'm gonna say, how'd it go?
It was awesome. I did that Saturday and the following Saturday. I think this is back in June. And then I was like, okay, you can handle this.
Like, all right, I'll go back next week. Right.
So I started
We'll
off doing just like 2 Saturdays a month. And then as the fall went on, I was like, okay, you can do this. And then I started doing, more regularly. And it was a lot. Like, I had to really like figure out, like, for me, schedule wise of, hey, you sold out this week. Okay, you're scheduled for next week. You've got to get product made. So
in 6 days.
Yeah, literally. It was just, so I was like, on my goal was getting to the point where I had product on the shelf, to not only, because I was also doing other markets. I was doing Sunday markets. I was doing other events. I had a big event in Indy that I did, the Christmas gift and hobby show. So it was just like, when I tell you, it pushed me to that limit of managing my time, getting products done, and still working a day job. It was a lot, but I look back at it, I'm like, but I had an amazing year, and I met so many amazing people doing that market, and I'm like, you should have been doing this, all along. But, I had to get to that point where I was, I felt I was ready. Because I've followed so many vendors at the market, and I've seen how well they'd grown since I met them. And it was a little fear of, I don't know if I can do this. I don't want to fail. I don't want to be like, oh, I didn't make enough. Oh, I sold out. Oh, I did. All those things were going through my head, but I was like, no, you can do this. Just stay on top of it. So no, I'm glad I did. And I'm so looking forward to, the rest of the year. Then I was nervous about the winter market. I'm like, are people going to come out?
Right.
I didn't know. And even that's been just
They've
amazing.
been coming.
Like, even on days when it was like super cold, and I'm like, people aren't going to come.
No, they've been coming.
Like, they have been amazing.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to bundle up and we're coming out here. So, I took taking some time off right now to just kind of like recoup, inventory, figure out what I've got to order, things like that. But I'm like, I'm excited. Like, literally, I was just thinking the other day, I was like, I missed the market.
What's your favorite thing about it?
Just the atmosphere. Like, it's just like people come through the door and they're just like excited to see like what we had this week. Like, it's just amazing. And just shopping with the other vendors. Like, I tell people, I said, I feel blessed and I'm spoiled because there's so many things that I buy at the market that I used to get, at the grocery store and other places. And I'm like, no, it's like I'm shopping at the market first. Then if there are other things I need to get, then I'll go to the
You've
store.
transformed the way you shop even.
Literally, it's just like market first and then go somewhere else. And I'm trying to be that way with, not just like with my food, but if I need to get gifts for someone or I need something at home, my first thought is, have I seen this at the market? Well, let me check on Saturday before I go out to a store and buy this. And that's one of my things. I don't mind getting on my soapbox about that and sharing that with other people. How important it is to shop local, and how that's how we build community. That's how we transform our communities. One business at a time is that way. And then just getting in that mindset of, let me see if I can buy this from the market before I go somewhere else first.
Mm-hmm.
And if we all, start to do that more and more, then everybody wins. So yeah, I always get on my soapbox about
No,
that.
I love it. Yeah, from hoodies to beef jerky to candles, go to the market first,
Yeah,
right? And
definitely.
see what. Yeah, awesome. So we talked a lot about a lot of positive things that you see going on in Fort Wayne, but I want to ask you, do you see a challenge, maybe one above any others? Like, what would you say the biggest challenge for Fort Wayne is moving forward?
Um, I would like to see more, I guess, continuity, like between different groups. Whether it's an event, whether it's other markets. I just would like to see like more promotion across,
Cross
cross
promotion, yeah,
promotion.
sure.
Because I see it as this. We've got several other markets. We have always events going on. Um, and I see some things get promoted more than others. And I look at it this way, just like you go in the grocery store and there might be 20 different brands of, barbecue sauce or other things. Like there's room for all of us.
Right.
So that's just something that I've kind of noticed that there might be like almost like a popularity thing where there's like pockets of areas that are promoted more than others, and so that's just something I think could be worked on.
For sure. There's aspects of Fort Wayne where you say it's a little big city, and there's aspects where you say it's a big little city. And so the positives are when you say it's a little big city, it's some positives are, oh, the sense of community and all of that. And then when you say, well, it's kind of like a big little city, well, the big aspect is you're going to have some of that you talk about, like you said, quote unquote, popularity contest. Definitely. I see that as well. So no, that's a good point though. So I have one final question for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. If you were to purchase a billboard that was so high in the sky that everyone in Fort Wayne could see it, what would it say?
I thought this one over. And I didn't come up with an um, easy answer. I don't know. It's a combination of things. Kind of just like, reach for the stars. I have, I'm trying to think what it is. Kind of like this little nickname that I kind of gave myself, and it's Wind Song. And kind of what that is it's just kind of like, sing. I sing also, so but it's just like singing through your whatever it is you're dealing with, like soaring and singing through life. And so for me, like I'm always singing music. I'm always singing music notes. I'm always singing. Um, and so it would just be something like, you know, soaring and just pictures of music notes and just encouraging people, like no matter what it is you're doing, just like reach for the stars, just soar on that song in your heart. And that can transpire into just everything in your life. There are things we can control, there's things we can't control. But that would, and so that's one thing that I've kind of always like thought about. As a kid, I was always fascinated with the flame of a candle. Like literally I would just sit there for hours and I would just watch a candle burn. So it was just really something that ended up becoming, my thing. I make candles, and I just feel like it's like that beacon of light, that no matter what you might be going through, like that flame, it's just almost like that, hear people say, follow your North Star. It's like that flame is like leading you to that destiny, that's there for you. So I just feel like it was like destined for me that this would be the thing, that I would do. And just like same thing, even like with my card making, I've had people say, oh, you could just easily come up with some designs and you can just get those printed off. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. There's something about like actually cutting paper. There's something about the textures and like building a card and putting all these pieces together it's like I'm pouring out.
It's your baby.
Yeah.
I mean, it's yours.
And it's, to me, I wouldn't get that same effect if I designed something and just got it, printed off. Yeah, it's harder, because I'm literally sitting here and I'm, stamping things and coloring them and cutting them out. But the satisfaction that I have of like seeing this finished product and sharing that with other people is just, it's amazing. So it's like my way of pouring out like that positive energy into my work, and then it kind of gets packaged up and you're able to carry that off with you.
Oh, I love that. Thanks so much for being here. This podcast is brought to you by Coraggio Media. The show is edited by me and sponsored by the YLNI Farmers Market. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest updates. We will see you next week, where we will be sure to show you how you can enjoy Fort Wayne.